Hi, I'm Brandon Joffe with Inspired Resolutions, and this is Heather. I appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you.
Heather is going to give a little bit of a testimony that I hope inspires some of you to get help if you need help and continue the journey you're on, even if it's difficult and you're struggling to see the results of all the efforts that you're putting in. So welcome, Heather. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Can you share just first a little bit about what your testimony is going to be about before you share your testimony? And
Yeah, sure. I think that just first of all, reaching out and having like an objective, a person like yourself involved in my life has been really profound and life-changing, and it's showing up like in the smallest ways that are really impactful for my family dynamics at home. So even if I walk through my week and have different scenarios happen that I feel good about but haven't necessarily highlighted, then when I come in and have a session with you, then I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a big deal. Wow, a year ago I wouldn't have responded that way. So yeah, if it can help anyone.
It can be hard to see how far you've come or how much progress you've made sometimes because you're living it day by day. It's kind of like watching my daughter grow up right now. Sometimes I don't realize how much she's growing, and then I look at a picture and I go, oh my gosh, she looks so different. So,
have I been there this whole time?
Yeah. So we had been talking about some dynamics and some successes that you made. Why don't you just share your testimony and what you've experienced?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, regardless of my husband or my son or other people I am in relationship with in my life, how I interpret the scenario and how I respond is ultimately what's impacting me the most. So whether or not I think my husband's mad at me, or if I immediately take that on like, oh no, I'm in trouble, or oh no, I failed as a parent, it's changing just me alone, whether they have changed or anything externally has changed. I'm seeing that has been the most impacting thing, because if I'm able to respond differently and interpret what's going on around me differently, then that's where I'm finding the most peace. So for instance, like with I tend to want to mediate with my husband and my teenage son, and my teenage son is our biggest challenge, and I tend to take on that, like, if he's in trouble, I'm in trouble, or if, or that's what I had been in a pattern of doing.
Right. So you're right in the middle of their relationship rather than having an individual relationship with each of them. So what kind of issue? How did your being the mediator in the family affect you personally?
Well, it was overwhelming, and then it tended to make me want to be a bit resentful, I think, to my husband, protective of my son, and then resentful of my son and protective of my husband, and in this weird spot of like, man, I just want the best for everybody or for each party involved, and I somehow just took it on as like it's my responsibility to be the one to make sure that this all goes smoothly. And that, like, oh no, maybe you didn't understand what he was saying. Oh no, he didn't really mean that. What I think he meant was this. And it put a kind of an undue stress on me and an overwhelming sense of failure consistently.
Yeah, because that would be so draining. You've got this strained relationship you're trying to fix, mediate, and then that's, I assume, affecting your relationship with each of them, and then what you're doing is not working.
Yeah.
So you're putting in more work to the relationship than they are.
Pretty much.
And man, that's draining.
Yeah, and what makes it so complex is that my intentions are really good, And I love my husband. I think he's amazing. I think he's great in all of these ways. I love my son. I think he's amazing and great. And so I'm just trying to get them to see that in each other. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could kind of implant the good that we see in in people into the other person, but mediating or dictating or fixing somebody else's relationship, unless you're being paid for it, doesn't work,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it doesn't work.
So,
trying really hard.
So you're stuck in this kind of mediating role, then what?
Yeah. So, and just after working with you over time and starting to understand some of my own, I guess the way that I've been operating in a dysfunctional manner, even though it was maybe well-intentioned or, whatever, just trying to keep myself healthy and put on my own oxygen mask first. I think each baby step, which are, in these scenarios end up being really big victories in the long run. And even if they're just a situation that passes by that maybe neither of them even remember, it was big for me because I can go to bed at night feeling, happy and healthy and whole and not drained and like I've failed or.
I love that message. Just the message that you have to actively be looking for your successes, and if you're not, you don't get to go to bed feeling proud and feeling happy.
Yeah.
And I think the part of the step forward takes place when you maybe do something different successfully, but the other part takes place when you recognize it and can be proud of it and go, like you said, go to bed happy. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
What a great point. Okay. So you started seeing little pieces here and there. They don't recognize it all the time, but you're starting to see how, it sounds like how differently you're interacting with them, even if they're not. Were they interacting with each other differently?
Yeah, I mean, kind of as a result, I think, of maybe me not stepping in. I mean, if I would have, like in this particular situation I'm thinking of that happened when, between the two of them, and I would have responded much differently a year ago or 6 months ago, I just wondered, man, if I would have responded the same way this time, I wonder if the same thing, like, okay, places everybody, let's all play our role in this, disaster that's about to take place. So, I mean, and that's not what happened. It was, I'm like, saw the difference. So, what happened was my son had wanted a skateboard. We got him a skateboard. No big deal. He broke it like within a day, just on accident. I told him I'd replace it, no problem. And so that was between my son and I. And then the next time I was off work, he came to me in the morning. I was sitting with my husband and said, "Hey, can we go get the deck for my skateboard today?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And then my husband didn't necessarily know about it, but he started in with, "Hey, you know what? You need to really pull your weight around here, and you need to. There's some chores and things I need you to be doing." And I mean, what he was asking was reasonable, and I was like, "Oh yeah," but I don't think my son or myself were connecting it to the skateboard necessarily, even though I think maybe in my husband's
And there's a
mind.
lot of background to this, though, with your son's behavior and things that have gone on. So that can get so confusing sometimes, right? Your husband's sitting there rightfully thinking, hey, because of the history of everything, we got to earn our way, and we're trying to teach him and help him move forward as a man.
Yeah.
And you're in this really good place with your son right now going, hey, without resentment, I want to give this gift. He may not deserve it, but I want to give this gift to him. And it was just it sounds like it was kind of a natural thing, nothing you really thought about. And then you come to this point where, okay, cool. sounds like my husband wants to, gets that we're going to give him this skateboarding, but is also taking an opportunity to kind of say, hey, come on, pull your weight. But his interpretation, it sounds like, was more, hey, if you want to skateboard.
Right. And he didn't say that directly to either of us, but me just knowing him and knowing just, I guess, as an adult, even just seeing like he's connecting the two, but I'm watching my son not connect it at all. He's just like, yeah, for sure. Like, it was just like, okay, you're here, we're all talking. Let's remind you about like, having taken responsibility and doing things. It wasn't a concrete, like, you will not get a skateboard unless you do X, Y, and Z. So,
and your son saying, yeah, sure, at something like that, and even having that conversation was a success.
Yeah, that was a success. There wasn't animosity, there wasn't tension about it. There didn't seem to be any judgment from either end. So,
okay. So real quick, I just want to take a little detour.
Sure.
Can you explain for us, and anybody who's watching this, how far had your son come to get to the point that when he's being told, hey, you need to pull your weight, and he takes that in a positive manner, how far had he come to get to that point?
Yeah, leaps and bounds for sure, because hearing that maybe from me, he would still be like, what do you mean? What am I doing? I do myself. A little defensive, hear it as a criticism coming from my husband, who their relationship was full of a lot of tension. It could have been a full-on blowout. Okay. So even just having that calm interaction and and obviously he was excited about getting something too, so it was like, okay, it was that in and of itself was its own victory. In my mind, I've already told him I was going to replace the deck, and I had no problem doing that, and I didn't have any stipulations on it. It was a simple thing. Broke, I'll get you new one. It's not a big deal. So I get him the skateboard that day, and we talk a little bit about what Dad was saying about the yard, and what do you think? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do the yard, I'll do that for sure. And I was reminding him of some common chores when you see the trash full, and simple. And it was positive. Got the board, got home, he put it together, and went skateboarding.
So in talking to him, though, you're keeping this kind of lighthearted, we'll call it non-nagging tone. Yeah,
absolutely. Just a good adult conversation, if you will, just kind of trying to highlight, like...
Does he deserve an adult conversation, or were you just doing that because it was healthy?
I was doing it because it was healthy, and I felt like because I respect him, and just... I also know that he's still a teenage boy who is maybe just thinking about skateboarding and surfing or whatever. I was just thinking, let's casually talk about like what that could look like logistically, without like boring him to death with like a to-do list where his eyes roll in the back of his head and I lose him. So, just mentioning it, that he remembers that conversation happened, and gets home, goes skateboarding. I was fine with that. Part of me, the old part of me, would have been like, no, you need to do the yard because Dad's gonna come home and he's gonna be mad, and you need, but I just thought, I didn't have a full moment of stopping myself. It was just a quick moment of like, no, that's not my job. That's not what I'm gonna do right now. Okay. He understands what we talked about. I know that I didn't put any stipulations on the whole scenario, and the old me, I think, would have been really focused on like, but I know that my husband's thinking this, and he's probably wanting this, so I got to make sure this happens, and I'm going to orchestrate this whole thing. I know that was kind of
this was like a huge moment of stepping out of that mediator role.
Yeah.
And I love the aspects that you're describing, because you're describing, I know what might be going on, but I'm not highlighting the dynamics for everybody, right? That's the first moment that you didn't step in. You didn't step in to explain, well, hey, son, this is what dad's thinking, and hey, dad, this is what your son's thinking. You just went, okay, I observe, I see, here's how I'm going to behave in the relationship.
Yeah.
And then you had a moment of fear.
Sure.
But you trust your loving marriage. There can be conflict without it falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though you suspected that maybe there's something that might happen, or your husband might be a little unhappy, you chose to behave in a healthy manner, in the manner that you decided to, and not jump into mediator role out of fear. You almost just went, I'm just going to let this play out.
Yeah. And I felt good about it.
And he felt good about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't feel
not good in a.
I didn't feel like this is scary, or like, ooh,
Yeah.
I'll show you how healthy I am. Like,
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot of thought on in a negative way. It was just more like, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Almost you're at peace with, I'm not the mediator, rather than I'm making a point.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good.
So it happened like I imagined.
Okay.
And actually even a little bit more so than I thought. My husband came home, and first thing he said, very frustrated, "Where's Tristan? What's going on? Why didn't he do the yard?" And I just thought, I'm not the teenager here. I'm not in trouble. And I'm not going to respond like that, or respond in fear, which is a knee-jerk reaction of kind of the old pattern. So I just said, "Oh, he's out skating." And he said, "Well, I thought he was going to do the yard." And I said, "Yeah, he talked about doing the yard." And yeah.
So you just remained cool?
Yeah.
And it's almost, you're willing to have the conversation. You didn't pull the, well, if you're going to talk to me, I'm going to walk away thing. It's almost like you disengaged from the emotions that he was bringing to the conversation, and made a decision about the wife that you wanted to be in that moment.
Right.
Both assertive, but also cordial and loving.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah, actually. Because I was just kind of focusing on not taking on all of the weight of that. I'm in trouble. I should have made him know. Did he deserve the scapegoat? I didn't even go there in my mind, or take it off, or take it on. I just tried to remain light and just confident in knowing like nothing really bad has happened here.
Yeah.
And I don't feel sneaky or shady, or not making up any excuses for anybody. So
isn't that funny that, and I'm making an assumption here, but I would assume that when you're in the mediator role, you almost have to be sneaky, and you're not a shady person, but a little bit shady and a little bit manipulative, because you're trying to get power that you don't have.
Yeah.
And so when you make the decision to just be healthy, even if somebody's unhappy with you for the moment, that burden lifts.
Yeah.
What a powerful just kind of realization.
Yeah, it felt, it was just kind of freeing, and there was peace in it, even though nobody likes conflict. I mean, maybe some people, nobody really enjoys it, or, we don't like to avoid it if we can. But I was just like this, I'm okay with it right now, because I feel at peace about the decisions made and how this is playing out. In a perfect world with perfect robots for children, it's like he would have went and happily done the yard and whatever, but it's not the world I'm living in. So he was very frustrated. My husband was very frustrated about that. He was very vocal about it. Said he was like, and I empathize with him too. I get his perspective. Like, he's trying to help this kid be a young man who's responsible. I mean, I get it. So and that's where I slip into all of my control things and mediating things, is because I do get what he wants, and I do get how Tristan just like, yay, a skateboard. Yeah. So he was frustrated, and I said, well, I'm sorry you're angry. I know you're not angry at me because I haven't done anything wrong. You didn't directly say Tristan needed to do this in order to get this. So that's why he's skateboarding right now. And I think he understands that you want him to really, step up more around here. And just left. I said, I made dinner. I'm happy you're home. I'm going to have a good night. So, he was still huffing and puffing, and I didn't take it on. And I think I just felt okay with that. I mean, I was like bummed, like, man, I want to have a good night. I'm excited. And that's what I told him. I said, I'm so excited to see you. I'm so excited you're home.
Yeah.
Like, let's have a good night.
That's awesome.
And then I just went about finishing dinner, and he blew off some steam. And, later we ended up having a really good evening.
Wow.
My son came home later and was like, came up and talked to me. And I said, how was skateboarding? I didn't say like, oh, I just said, hey, is Dad downstairs? Did you talk to him? He said, yeah. I said, well, what, did you say anything? And he was like, no.
Wow.
He wanted to see my skateboard.
Wow.
I'm like, cool.
What do you think that's how your husband would have responded had you had a big discussion about it, tried to convince him of your ways, or do you think that it helped that you just emotionally kind of just kept being there for him while he was struggling? And it's almost like in a way you invited him to join you when he was ready to be in a good place.
Yeah.
But would he have responded that way to your son had you had the tough discussion, join him in the conflict?
No. I think it would have been a big sit down of the same conversation with the different words and different tones and trying different angles of the same thing that's not working.
Okay.
So I think it would have caused us to have more of a drawn out conflict and strain, and just where it almost gets murky to where like I'm mad at you, and then like I don't know if am I mad at you, but either way you're just not having, it's not a good night, it's ruined. So I think it and I wasn't I don't think I was really conscious and actively like trying to do this whole thing. It's just something that's starting to happen.
Yeah, it's becoming your natural way of dealing with conflict in your home, because you're not in that mediator role at all anymore.
Yeah.
So what happened next? Because how this plays out is kind of interesting.
So the next day, so we all have a great night. Everybody's at peace, I think if Tristan would have come home and would have gotten up and sit down, this is what we told you, why didn't you do this? This is what you do to X, Y, and Z, none of that happened. It was just a good, peaceful. So the next morning, I got up and my son was out mowing the lawn.
Wow.
Yeah. Not being asked, not being reminded, not being scolded, not being bribed.
It was on his time,
but
it was getting done.
Yeah. We did the lawn, and I was like, wow, that's cool. And then when my husband came home that evening, he said, did he do the yard? And I said, yeah. And he said, why? Like, what happened? What did you
I can only imagine what was going on for him. He didn't do what he normally would do. That makes sense, right? Normally we've got to nag most parents believe we got to nag them, and we've got to remind them, and we've got to get on them, or it's never going to get done. But sometimes you don't say anything, and it's more powerful, even if it's not on your time. It's funny because I think in life a lot of things happen as long as you don't try to make them happen, and you can be a little patient and not need them to happen on your time. Right? But so it wasn't on Dad's time, it wasn't on Mom's time, but your son got the yard done.
Yeah, and I think it also empowered him. Like, I think he felt proud about that, and there was something that he felt responsible. Like, he didn't just get, yelled out the door to go do it. And I know that he hates being made to feel like a kid.
Yeah.
And I think it was something where he took some pride in it and knew that it was, I don't know, I just think I think with me staying out of it and trying to explain and justify everybody to death and not trying to defend or, I don't know, it just let everybody kind of be at peace somehow.
Good job.
And didn't even realize, and I did, and then the other victory too is that because I'm such a processor and verbal, and I would have wanted to like sit down and be like, no, see, Ross, this is what happened, and see, this is why, but we didn't even have that conversation. I just thought, okay, I like this. This feels good for our family for right now, and
That's cool.
It's eons from where we were months ago. And
Yeah. What I love is in your story, I'm sure they know you're working on things, but it's not like they're this big part of coming to therapy with you and doing family therapy and working on your son and working on your husband. You getting healthier and you doing little things for yourself, really, is and was contagious in your entire family. So that's pretty wild. Just the little things that you're doing, and it's nothing huge.
Right.
Is changing their behavior, and they're not even aware.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
And I wouldn't have even trusted the process either, I guess, and that's the problem too, is that I've just wanted to like so actively be in control. I'm so willing to change, willing to do things, willing to take steps, action plans, but actually just stepping out and working on the things that we're working on is having fruit. So
Yeah. Well, your story, your testimony is powerful, and I know a lot of people can kind of relate to that scenario in and of itself. So thank you. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from it. Is there anything you would tell parents specifically who are struggling with this dynamic of raising a difficult teenager? You can't tell them everything, obviously, because you're doing a lot of work, but is there one message that you might say, hey, look, start here. This is where you need to start?
Gosh, I feel far from anywhere near being able to even fully speak to that, but I would say just start with loving on your kid as hard as you can, and maybe even letting go of trying to fix them, because that's my daily thing that I see. Not even just fix them, and we have all the best of intentions in the whole world, especially as parents, but to just love on them anyway.
Yeah. I think that is where to start. Is first you got to love on this unlovable person who's unlovable sometimes, or unlovable all the time at times. You've got to love on them unconditionally, but in doing that, to even be able to do that, you have to let go of needing to fix them.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the beginning for every parent who's struggling journey, is letting go of what you're trying to control.
Yeah.
So.
And the whole thing that I'm learning here with you about just not falling into that mindset of your kids are a direct reflection of you, good or bad, and just trying to shake off that societal norm of, oh, you see a good kid or you see an academic honors athlete, student, and you think, man, that's just good parenting. Or you see kids being punks out in the, parking lot at Bonds, and you're like, dang, where are those kids' parents?
Yeah.
I think just consciously just trying to let that go too, because I think
Good.
that's something big in the parent and the mom world that we cling to, of like, well, if my kid's acting like this, then I must have done this,
Yeah.
and they better do this because I'm gonna look like this, and
That's good.
just finally like just letting it go, because at the end of the day we just want our kids to be whole, healthy human beings.
Yeah. And their journey, where they're at in their journey right now, isn't proof of where they're going to be.
Yeah.
If that were true, I definitely wouldn't be sitting here as a therapist. But
Sure.
I think assessing a child when they're 16, 17, 18, even 20 it's frivolous, right? They're literally in the middle of building the foundation for who they're going to be when they're 30.
Yeah.
And so when we judge other parents by that, or we judge ourselves by that, we're doing a total disservice, because even that punk in the parking lot might have two parents who are absolutely incredible and doing everything right. And that punk
For sure.
might become a therapist running a therapy center, or a doctor who solves the pandemic,
Yeah.
you know, and
Exactly.
and so that's
It's not that
powerful.
far off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you. I'm happy to.
All right.